Cost approach to value. The cost approach values the property as a combination of the value of the land, as if it were vacant, and the cost to reconstruct any of the structures or buildings that exist as of the date of value. Once we have the cost of reconstruction, we then need to reduce that figure by the accrued depreciation of the building that currently exists on the property, because we are comparing to a new building when we say reconstruction cost. It's a bit like the sales comparison approach when adjusting the value of the comparable to match the subject. We have the cost of building new, then we need to reduce that value of the new property by the amount of depreciation to get it in line with the existing property. Just like the sales comparison, the principle of substitution is what is underlying the process. The price we assume is going to be set by that of an equivalent substitute. Once you have the cost of the land as if it were vacant, and you add in the reconstruction cost of the new building with all the direct, indirect expenses and the building profit, this should define the upper limit of the property's value. If any of the other approaches to value exceed this amount, then it's likely that a mistake has been made. After establishing the value of the new replacement, we need to reduce by the accrued depreciation of the improvements. And this has to be done including all causes of reduction of depreciation, including physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, or external obsolescence. That means that we're looking at the condition of the property improvements, how marketable they are at the date of value, and then if there's any external influences which might increase or reduce that value. We would then deduct the accrued depreciation from the replacement cost, new, to find the estimated value of the improvements. Lastly, we would take all of those values of the improvements and add it to the value of our vacant land to come up with the full value for the cost approach. There's some intricacies when we're determining the value of the building at its reconstruction cost. There are three ways to base the reconstruction cost. They are historic cost, index to cost new, reproduction cost new, and replacement cost new. Each of these helps to define the cost as new. So we need to look at each one in depth to see the differences. First up, historic cost indexed to cost new. Historic cost is the actual cost of the building when it was built. For example, what was the cost when it was built in 1950? By using the price indices from a building cost service or from the original building contractor, historic cost can then be indexed to the date of value. It's much like the financial examples you'll see when you read in the paper that something cost $50 million in 1990, and if you put that in current dollars, it'd be $78 million today. There are advantages and disadvantages to this approach. One advantage is we know we're using an accurate building cost. The disadvantage is that the older it is, the less likely we're going to be able to find a useful value when we index. Reproduction cost, new, means that the cost as of the date of value is when we're reconstructing a replica of the appraised building. The term replica means that we're matching in design and materials. With this method, the cost as new estimate is made as if we were looking to create a duplicate of the present building. That has advantages because there's a great amount of accuracy in duplicating every part of a structure. The disadvantage is that we're considering replacing what may be standard at the time that it was built, but doesn't meet today's standard. This just means that advances in materials and construction methods couldn't be considered when we're replicating exactly what is there. Replacement cost new considers the structure as if it were rebuilt with the current methods of design and materials as of the date of value. It allows for flexibility, unlike the reproduction cost, which requires strict replacement of the same materials and standards. The flexibility is not infinite, and the design and materials need to be closely matched, or at least as closely as reasonably possible in construction methods and materials. This will make sure that the functional utility of the building should be the same, even though the materials may have shifted. An example is an older brick warehouse wouldn't likely be reconstructed today using the same materials due to cost and updated methods, but instead would be built with something like concrete block or possibly even tilt-up cast slab construction. The big advantage is that by replacing the property with current materials and methods, getting accurate costs for these items is a lot easier and therefore more effective. The disadvantage is it requires judgment calls by the appraiser when they have to decide what is the appropriate replacement material and design.